September, and, the Indians, I think, are going to be right in there. And when you got a guy who's giving you 5 extra wins over an average player, that's going to be the kind of thing that can help to make the difference. And what that does for, Frank Hunter this week is, he was able to rest most of his bullpen, and then you've got more options when you come into, these next few games where you can play more lefty-righty matchups. That's what Kluber's been doing throughout this hot streak. He's been able to eat up a lot of innings and keep that bullpen rested, so it gives Frank Hunter a lot of options so he can match up pitchers on other hitters. And I think we've seen that. We've seen a lot of improvements throughout the just even in the last 6 weeks or so from the bullpen. Even guys like, Nick Hagedorn, who didn't do great yesterday, but his, ERA has really come down a lot, and you get people like Carrasco and, Zabzinski and different people like that you can, match up one-on-one. Then you get yourself set up very nicely for the end of the game, and you've got Allen coming on for the fifth. So, the kind of performance that Kluber turned in yesterday is going to pay dividends, I think, tonight and tomorrow, I think, for the Indians.
Absolutely, and that's key, continuing to protect that bullpen. The more they can do that, and that's why I mentioned Bauer, and I saw Bruce in the chat room, I agree with what he said, not completely sold. I mean, every time he goes out there, I breathe a little easier. I go, man, all right, he followed up the last one with another good one. I mean, that's how you gain faith, you see him do it again and again, you go, all right, man, the kid keeps stepping up, but he's lengthening himself out. He's giving you more. Remember, we mentioned it was a month, 6 weeks back, when the Indians bullpen needed it, and then Bauer went out there and went 100, 110 pitches, 112, something like that, and really took a load off of the bullpen. And that's when I said, hey, and he said, I can do this every day. He said, I've got the arm, I can take the work, but he's been doing that. And like I said, his last few starts, you've went, oh, wow, he's stretched himself out each time. Got to continue to show it for consistency, but that's going to be big because then that bullpen goes back to being the strength that it was at the beginning of the season and that it can be. The other guy I mentioned as being MVPs of the season, Brantley. I talked about his run here, 3 separate 5-game hitting streaks of multiple hit games. Last time an Indians player did that, I didn't even realize this until I started talking about it. 1994, Albert Bell was the last time, last time that an Indians batter had 3 separate five or more multi-hit game streaks.
That's pretty amazing, and especially because Brantley was so hot throughout the first half of the season. And again, I think that Brantley can almost be credited for single-handedly keeping the Indians from falling into too deep of a hole in the first half of the season. There were some times when Brantley was really the only thing keeping the team going, especially on offense. So the fact that it's the second half of the season and, he's still going, of course, he had a little bit of a hiccup, I believe, after the All-Star break, but now, he's right back to it, mashing away, and he's just such I still think he's very underrated around the league, and we really, I think, have an appreciation for what he can do, just the consistency that he brings us, because, frankly, the offense, I think, still hasn't been as great as we wanted it to be this year. It's had its moments, and it sometimes comes through at the right time, but overall, I think we would love to see everybody's batting averages, be a little bit higher, including, Asdrubal maybe could have still been here for the stretch, but he's not. So the fact that Brantley's been able to continue to mash like that, especially with, Chisenhall cooling off a little bit from his super torrid pace that he had in the first half, that really says something. And he's been, like you said, just as valuable on the offensive side as Kluber's been as a pitcher. And hopefully he can keep it going. He's just showed remarkable consistency.
I just thought of a question, and maybe you can think of this off the top of your head and you see what you come up with, but looking at Brantley and Kluber, and I know that where they finish in this is going to partly be determined by whether the Indians make the playoffs or not, but I've got to think, if the season ended today, you've got to think that both of those guys in their respective category as far as MVP and Cy Young, wouldn't you think if the season ended today, Brantley and Kluber would clearly be at least in the top 5 voting of both of those categories? Do you think I'm too far off there?
Well, I think you're right in that they deserve to be in the top 5. I'm not sure that they would get the votes for being in the top 5, considering that the Indians aren't all the way at the top of the mountain right now. If the season ended, they would be a little bit out of the playoffs. and they still might not get the national recognition from the writers around the country. I think they make the top 10, but I do think they deserve to be in the top 5. If people knew what they were talking about, then yes, I think they should definitely be in there. Simply because they just haven't had a whole lot of help. I mean, Kluber has really been anchoring this really patchwork. It's still a patchwork starting rotation that they've been shuttling people up and down, up and down. They're going to bring up Tomlin again. Hopefully he'll be able to do well tonight. And then, like I said, with Brantley, dragging this offense with him, for a long time, just really being the one consistent bright spot. I think they both definitely deserve it, not just because of the numbers they put up, but the lack of help that they've each gotten on either side of the ball.
Well, here's where I was going with that. More than do they deserve it, I wasn't going there. What I was looking for was, when's the last time the Indians have been in a position where they've had both an offensive player even in the MVP discussion for the league and a pitcher in the Cy Young conversation at the same time. And that's why, man, if they can, it makes you go, man, you wish that they could and I get people's frustration with not adding to this team, but you look at the playoff hopes, you don't want to let that go because you don't know. And that's my point, is you don't know how often that comes around. That's why I'm asking, just theoretically, when's the last time that you can remember that, for them truly having people one in each in that discussion? You've got to go back a bit.
Oh, yeah, you got to back probably almost about 20 years. I mean, considering all the great hitters that the Indians had in the mid-'90s, and they had a few, pitchers have individual superlative seasons.
I mean, they've had one or the other, since then. They've had, some Cy Young pitchers, obviously. You've had CC, you've had Cliff Lee, you've had those guys, or you've had some hitters go, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know.
At the same time. I think you might have to go back to the mid-'90s, and I think even then we may have had the hitters, but not the pitchers at the time. We had very good pitchers, guys like Oral Hershiser and Dennis Martinez and Charles Nagy, but maybe they weren't really at a super elite Cy Young level at the same time where we had some hitters at the MVP level. I don't know how far back you have to go to have both of them in the same season. It's longer than I can remember, unless there's a dead spot in my memory.
Brother, I wish Doc Brown could invent a real-life DeLorean, because I would put Corey Kluber in it, I would go back to 1995, and I would deliver him to John Hart, and I would say, I present to you a World Series. His name is Corey Kluber. This is the last piece of what you need. If only we could do that.
That would be beautiful. And that definitely would have been enough to win it in 95.
That would have been the piece. For sure, right there. But Indians now, let's get back to the current day. It's nice to fantasize. But Indians, Brantley, Kluber, all of that leads to tonight, final game of the series. You got duct tape night. I don't know what else to call it, but duct tape night. Dollar dogs and duct tape, baby. And Indians looking to finish strong before they finish the other half on the other side of the state here when they take on the Reds in Cincinnati. What are you looking for tonight? You think the Indians can drop the hammer and finish this thing strong? Finish out this homestand with back-to-back sweeps?
I would love to think that. I think Cueto is on the hill tonight, if I'm not mistaken, for the Reds, and he's pretty tough. So, they're going to have to definitely give Tomlin some support on the offensive side of the ball. I think they can do it. They have a lot of momentum on their side. I think, on paper, the pitching matchup, definitely favors the Reds when you have a guy that you're bringing up from the minors facing a guy who's been quite, successful. But I think, like we said, the Indians have really had that magic going at home like they did last year. I just hope that they can start playing with that same kind of consistency on the road, because, trading back and forth, really good performances with kind of flat performances on the road, that's ultimately not going to get the job done. They need to, put it together tonight and then keep that momentum going against these same Reds down the road the next 2 days and keep it going. So it's going to be an uphill climb, but I think they can do it because, their hitting has really started to come along with, guys like Gomes, just really being a good, consistent contributor there. And then, you have Santana, who's been sort of up and down, and hopefully he can come back up. So the Indians have the kind of lineup that can always explode on somebody, but you never know whether it's going to be that tonight. Tonight's going to be a good time to do it, but it's not going to be easy.
No, and I don't know that they're offensively going to explode on Johnny Cueto. You talk about him doing well, that's an understatement. His last 5 starts, he's 4-0 with a 2.3 ERA, doing some things much like what we've talked about with Corey Kluber here. But here's some other things that don't bode well for the Indians. The Reds have dropped 10 straight games down at Progressive Field. Last time they won a game there, Johnny Cueto was the starter. That was about 4 years ago. In his career against the Cleveland Indians, he is 5-0 the team is 5-0 in his 5 starts. He is personally 3-0 with a 2.1 ERA against the Indians. However, that's over the years. No Indians hitter currently has more than 5 at-bats against him. So this is a different lineup. So everything is on its own, but a couple of things not boding well for the Indians. Worse than that, though, you can deal with a good pitcher on the other side. It's what Josh Tomlin is going to show up tonight. And you all know, this is my boy. I'm not afraid to stick my hand up and go, I love Josh Tomlin. It's been the tale of 2 seasons for him. The great start to the season, and then everything that's happened in the last 2 months, and look at the difference. I mean, he's now sitting 5-7, his ERA hovering near 4.5. The last month just absolutely wrecked him. 0-2, 6.5 ERA, gets called down, gets called back up here, gonna get another chance to get it going. His last 4 home starts, Josh Tomlin 0-3 with a 7.77 ERA. He has gotten drilled, and the Indians have lost all 3. So really, much more important than how Cueto performs, because he's going to do his thing, is how Josh Tomlin performs. He's got to give the Indians a chance. Otherwise, they could fall behind early, and it's all but over there. So he's got to give the Indians a chance tonight.
That's right. Tomlin, he's got the perfect opportunity to do that, because it looks like Zach McAllister is pretty much out of the picture. So the job is right there for him to win. And so, he's got to do it with the home, the home crowd support and everything. This is the perfect time for Tomlin to put it all together. And if not, this is one of the times where people say, well, they should have gone out and got a starting pitcher. Like, well, they're just not out there growing on trees. You can't just pick up a reliable starting pitcher, because that's the most valuable commodity that every team is looking for. And if Tomlin really were to crash out of the rotation and pretty much to give up on him, I almost wonder if they might not give Carrasco another chance to start, because they're not doing anything too important with him. They don't have Carrasco in a role that they can't take him out of and just try him again. They keep trying everybody again and hoping that it'll stick. I mean, it's worked with Salazar, and now they're going to try to make it work with Tomlin, but I think Tomlin's kind of running out of chances. This start and maybe the next 2 are going to be crucial for him if he wants to stick with this team the rest of the way, and the Indians really need him.
Absolutely. They absolutely need him. And against the Reds, he's not terrible. He's, pretty well 1-1, 4.0 ERA in 3 starts against the Reds. So we'll see what he does tonight. Talk about running guys out there and giving them opportunities. Nick Swisher here just when I thought perhaps he may be headed to the disabled list, and I'm not sure, but now they're talking about he's going to be right back out there because they don't want to hit the road shorthanded when they have to play the next 2 games under National League rules. I really thought that the wrist was going to be an easy out for him to go to the Indians and say, hey, take me out of the lineup for a while. But the way Terry was talking, I don't think that's what they're going to do, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's not back out there like tonight or tomorrow. I definitely think so. Nick Swisher with the 2nd worst batting average in the American League, 212.
Oh,
really, I thought for sure that was kind of the you used to hear about this a lot. The guys that know that it's just not happening right now and they're hurting the team, you don't want to put the coach in a position to where he has to feel bad about making you look bad and publicly, pulling you out of the lineup. So you go and you say, hey, my wrist is hurt, and you take a week or 2 off and you see what happens. And I really thought that was kind of what we were looking at. But now, no, it looks like that he may be right back out there in the lineup sooner rather than later.
Yeah, well, they might just need him just because he is, a warm body. Because, with Bourne being hurt, and of course they traded Cabrera,
He's working his
this
way
is a
back,
team
by
that's
the way.
really trying to make do with guys like, Jose Ramirez and, Chris Dickerson and, guys that they hope would be in the minors right now, but they're being pressed into Major League service. So if Swisher can get out there at all and they just DH and then maybe pinch hit the next couple of days, they might just need to get whatever kind of production they can get from him. Obviously, again, it's like with a pitcher. There's not like a great big bat that they could have brought in there to help out down the stretch. You got to go with what you have, and especially with the money that they've committed to Swisher, they've got to throw him out there and hope for the best. There's really no other alternative. It's like, here's the life raft, and you've got to swim.
No, there is an alternative. There comes a point where the money comes out of the equation. As much as we like to say that, I mean, you cannot continue to have that hole out there. I think we've seen. I do believe that the Indians' offense